Here? Just here? Yep. OK. Yep. And these biscuits, are they for kind of general consumption, or...? OK, yeah, and I can just take the cling film off, can I? Yeah. Oh, no, don't worry. I only want one. Yeah. Thank you. I've only got one line in this commercial. 2 burly removal men walk across the shot, carrying a roll of underlay between them, and I stick my hands out and I say, "Great savings! Great savings." I mean, it's taken about a lifetime of acting experience, about 20 grand's worth of training fees, and this is it. My skull of Yorick. My Bracknell's handbag. Oh, God, I've been up since 5 a.m. And it's, what time is it now? Oh, I had to take my watch off, didn't I? Yeah. The plastic rainbow clock face was too much. Anyway, it's been about a couple of hours, and it's probably going to be another couple of hours till I get on that set and I recite those 2 immortal words in these shapeless jeans and this shirt that's so pedestrian that, I mean, the costume assistant assures me it matches my casting, whereas I think I look a bit like a estate agent on a team building weekend. Look, I know I'm playing a character, presumably one that really wants you to buy a cheap carpet. But in what universe is my casting so far removed from, well, me? I guess my face must be really versatile, much more versatile than my personality. I guess with this mask and these garments, it just screams like, beer down a local, darts on a Wednesday, blokey type bloke. Yet, for some reason, as soon as I open my mouth, that illusion just kind of evaporates. Like, I get it, it's work. But is this how I really want to get it? To be dumbed down, sterilised, normalised? I mean, after everything that I've been through, the irony is maddening. See, in 1981, when I was born, everything was well with the world. It's a boy! Hurrah! Hang blue from the nursery curtains and stuff my wardrobe with navy, cornflower, cerulean fabrics. I had a penis. Therefore, the die was cast. I was now predisposed to wearing mud-splattered sportswear and wanting nothing more than to chop things into smaller things using macho-style equipment. It was around about 3 that things started to go slightly awry. I actually didn't want to get my clothes or my nails dirty, like, at all. And rather than to accept a tea towel being wrapped around my head when the nursery school nativity came about, oh, I'd so much rather have played Mary. And so I guess a bell was sounded to reverberate around the church spires. This little boy is different. Batten down the hatches and lock up your sons. And when I say different, I mean, I don't mean gay as such. That's fairly undetectable in a toddler. What I really mean is camp. Camp is the wild card. Camp is the dark horse. It's the plot twist. Camp was the curveball that dropped the gavel on the possibility of a little boy like me ever leading a normal, uncomplicated life in the comfort of his own hometown. That was kind of now off the table. All was not lost. I still had a fate. But everyone but me seemed to know what that fate was. I, it was decreed, was off to another place entirely. London, a magical place. To tread the path of all those camp children who came before me. It was a place where we could group up, run riot in debauched, amoralistic fashion. I mean, London was stitched into the tapestry of my history, yet few of my relatives had ever been further than Swindon's magic roundabout. Oh, Janet, you'd never catch me up London, said my brash Auntie Annie as she pulled on her Rothmans. You know, up London, they'll steal the plaque off your teeth, no messing. Then they'll come back for their gums. And yet, the people in London were supposed to look after me better than the people in Hereford. It was presented to me like some kind of Garden of Eden, where the whispering words and the judging eyes of the mothers watching me sashay through the school gates at age 7 years old would just fade into distant memory like a nun on a moped. In reality, London was everything that they don't mention in the guidebooks. Dirty, poverty-stricken, unpredictable, unforgiving, and cripplingly lonely. Do you know, it was a bit like a concentration camp, but with an H&M. All those people who pushed this life onto me, they'd forgotten one little detail. That my experience of the world was no different to theirs. I mean, OK, I was a little more au fait than them with finding the meaning behind the lyrics of Lisa Stansfield, but I was just a gay little lad from Hereford. I had no concept of the world beyond the why. Of course, I was always earmarked for the stage. As a camp person, it's inevitable. I was never going to be satisfied with dreams of becoming a recruitment consultant or a scaffolder. I mean, I had 11 GCSEs. 11. In geography, German, maths, but it was fruitless. I wouldn't be using any of them. You're going to be rich and famous, was the general consensus when it came to analysing my future. But will that fame be in the field of science? What? The razzmatazz and the dazzle of the show business world, it's an attractive prospect. Yeah, but will I be happy? I can remember always being made to feel like I'd come out wrong, like a factory defect, like a societal runt who you'd separate from the flock and you, I don't know, sell for a cheaper rate at market. And once you're branded with that iron, that's it. You're not spared any compassion or pity for that selection process. Whether you're an adult or a child, you were just abnormal. And you had to kind of take the shame. Oh, I mean, I could sit here and examine every single degrading, horrible thing that was said to me in my formative years, some of it by people who are quite old enough to know better. I could get choked up on the bitterness of it all, as if I just swallowed a gone-off baby Guinness. But at some point, you really have to shed that skin. I mean, would I have suffered this hardship had the word not been invented? But then camp was never meant to be a slur. It's a label. And one that those brave gay men who came before me, I mean, they lived in a time before sexual contact between them was legal. Therefore, they created this kind of made-up secret language so that they never got found out. And camp was just meant to describe the showy or flamboyant ones of the flock. But it's only present in a few. I mean, not every gay man has the limp wrist and the voice of Joanna Lumley, so where did mine come from? Was it a mutant gene somewhere in the conception process? Was it my mother's constant mollycoddling? It might have triggered something in my development. Or was it from watching too much Alexis Carrington on the television in the 1980s? Because although I had no part in its inception, camp has been stuck to my soul like seagull shit on a windscreen. It follows me round, poking its head into every conversation I've ever had like a nagging fishwife, giving me away, making me feel less welcome, less palatable, less attractive than some of my more male acting counterparts. Some people think I'm putting it on. It's like the crazy frog of the characteristic world. If camp sounds off in a Wetherspoon's toilet, you can see people physically groan and back away from the urinals. Some people find it relentless. Some people find it exhausting. Some think it's too all-encompassing to simply just ignore, and so they flatly reject it. And for a long time, I felt obligated to apologise for that, as if camp was just some kind of temporary annoyance that would just kind of fritter away the more I exposed myself to the martial arts. That if we all just hung on in there, then maybe the fly would eventually get swallowed up by the ointment and we could just get on with our lives without ever having to deal with it. Because camp, it's like a chemical vapour. You can't see it or touch it, but it's there. It's like seeping in through the nostrils to get under the skin. But camp doesn't care. Rather likes a challenge. As a child, camp's unseen hands were always like physically pulling me away from the Skye Electric downtown racetrack and pushing me more forcibly towards, I don't know, Barbie's disco catwalk and bistro. Its unseen hands would manipulate my limbs so that I kind of stood a bit like a teapot. Well, not just any teapot, a Clary's Cliff. And when it came to, I don't know, naming my teddy bears, camp insisted that I move away from traditional names like Edward, Rupert, in favour of less conventional ones like Bridie, or Barbara, or the Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy from Company B. And it's true, camp's ears wore out my cassette tape of Madonna's Immaculate Collection, seemingly all on their own. I mean, I think it was Vogue that did it, but for the dance moves. Had I been a proper little boy, then masculinity would have been my spirit animal. It would have stood behind me, like throwing its fists around as I smashed together toy cars or careered down an embankment on a precarious-looking BMX. It would have insisted that I plaster my walls with the jar-headed players of Sunderland AFC. But camp had no time for all that nonsense. I mean, contact sports, boring. Camp was creative. I mean, it loved a Kate Moss Calvin Klein magazine pull-out, a Magic Eye picture, or one of those album limited edition artwork things with a holographic Kylie on it. In fact, when Mum said that I could paint my room myself, well, camp just walked in, took one look at the walls, and said, well, this is just an empty art gallery with a bed in it. Let's make an exhibition. Because masculinity just fits a brief, but camp, it's got imagination. It's got nuance and perspective. And it made a mean collage. When school emerged, camp wasn't ready for it, and nor was it welcomed. The kids weren't used to seeing something so different, so unashamed. Kids like Leon Mosley. Leon Mosley was square-headed, watery-eyed, unnecessarily antagonistic boy in my form. He had like spiky hair and a faded second-hand blazer. Leon thought that I was a bit of an enigma and kind of one he didn't really want to try and decode. Maybe it was camp that Leon hated. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. Camp exposed all his shortcomings by being far cleverer and far more witty than he had any dream of being, especially in front of girls. Girls were naturally attracted to Camp's charm, albeit platonically, and Leon could only hope of having as much success in that department with only a lazy-eyed grin and copious amounts of Lynx Africa in his arsenal. I don't think Leon kind of liked himself very much, and he'd certainly upset his hairdresser somewhere along the line, so how did he expect anyone else to like him? But he was scary. He was tough, impulsive. And if his eye was trained on you, you had every right to be worried. Leon promoted himself to the role of prison guard, whose sole purpose was to discipline my camp at all times. In fact, trying to dodge him and his apostles down the toboggan run of school hallways often felt like the treacherous walk of the plank. But despite him and his army's valiant efforts, they were never going to exorcise camp from me. It was too entrenched. It was too clever. And so they just tried to contain it by surrounding it with this fear and shame. And because I was the host, the spotlight was on me. And suddenly, the school playground just became the set of this political civil war between the aggressors and the humanitarians. The humanitarians actually quite liked my camp. But I was a bit embarrassed by it. I didn't want to be part of the battle. I'd never asked for it. I was just being me. For some reason, that was a problem. To be fair to camp, it did toe the line when it was under threat. To protect me, it contorted itself into a corner and its voice was barely a squeak from a mouse. Having to endure this, we did become quite lonely, Camp and me. Of course, I can't really blame my classmates. I mean, Section 28, that was the reason why we had no education. There were no adults to ask. Every positive depiction of gay life was ripped from the walls and taken from the bookshelves. Even teachers who were gay, they weren't allowed to be out of the closet. They weren't allowed to talk about their lives or their same-sex partners. The look in Mr. Peters' eyes when he pulled down the blackboard and saw, scribbled on it, the word poof in angry chalk white letters. It was obviously written by one of the kids, but his mouth was clamped shut. He was powerless to say anything. It was a bit like me in this commercial. Say the lines, take the paycheck, don't question the authority, or else he'd have been out of work. How can his government have put him in that position? They said that it was to protect the innocence of children, that somehow normalising the gay agenda was putting young people at risk. Of what? They said it wasn't an attack on the gay community. But what about gay children? Did we somehow get caught up in the loophole? And for the camp ones, we had no chance. We might as well have been given an air horn to warn people we were coming. The kids didn't understand us. The country didn't understand us. All we could do was pray for that day when it would all be over. And for some, that day came quicker than others. That's really sad. For me, I just had to soldier on, take every battle as it came. And I'm so glad that I kept a little bit of blind faith through those hard times. As now, I can really reap the reward because I can say, my camp is beautiful and it wouldn't hurt anybody And when it's allowed to live without restrictions, all it can do is shine so bright that it bursts. It isn't capable of doing anything else. It pulsates against vibrancy. It soars to the melodies of the cheesiest pop music. It cries at weddings and adverts and shit Christmas films with an impressionable female lead. And I accept it for that. I love it for that. And I allow others to love it. It touches everybody it passes. It's got this fragrance that draws people in and this unabashed free-spiritedness. It's so funny. It's got a great memory and it knows the best stories, although it kind of has been accused of stretching the truth from time to time. It's got style. It's got finesse. It glosses my lips and it paints my nails, these vibrant colours. And I mean, not today. Had to take it all off for this. What the fuck am I doing? I've been sat here now in this joyless room for hours. And I'm just strangled. Strangled at the cuffs, strangled at the ankles, strangled at the neck. I don't think I can do this anymore. This is a uniform. Don't you think I've come too far to wear a uniform? I think that this life was designed for somebody else. I don't think it's designed for me. Oh, hi. Sorry, Sarah. Thanks. Okay, they're ready for me, yeah. Well, I've had a little bit of time to think while I've been sat there, and I've decided that I'm not doing it. I quit. Yeah, I'm ready to make great savings, but it's not going to be here. So, this is for you. In fact, do you know what my camp would say? It would say, you can take my shirt, but you'll never take my freedom. And it would also take these.